Namaste. I'm recording this on Thursday evening. Had a couple of days to digest the election results. And like probably most of you, I've been trying to make sense of it. What does this mean? How does it impact me? And most importantly, how do we move forward? I've made a point to speak to as many people as I can who have different points of view, including many people who are very happy with the result, as well as people that have been devastated by it. And I want to share a few sources of inspiration, if you will. And I want to acknowledge my friend Ben Bowler, who helped me to have a good handle on it. Also want to thank Deborah Giusti, who also offered some really valuable insights. Probably the highest form of spiritual practice that I'm aware of, and I talk a lot about this, is the practice of radical acceptance. You know, enlightenment doesn't come from getting tapped on the head by a guru. Enlightenment, as I have observed, and enlightened moments, which is more likely for most of us, very few of us are enlightened all the time, but we have enlightened moments. And those moments are when we are fully present to what is without the need to change it. And so we have an opportunity in what's going on in the world to practice radical acceptance of what is. And to go beyond right and wrong, go beyond good and bad, which is really important because there's been I think, very concerted effort to create big division, especially in this country, and to create either you love Trump or you hate Trump. Trump is either evil or he's God's chosen messenger. And he's probably neither. He's probably a little bit of both, maybe. And what is also true, and one of the things that I teach as a coach, is to differentiate between the being and their choices or their behavior that bother you. And so, as a spiritual practice for myself, I'm going to do my very best, and it's a real effort, to not see him as bad or evil, but to hold the highest vision, to hold the vision that this time around, he will approach the presidency in the highest way. I'm going to hold that vision for him. I'm going to keep my eyes open, but not allow myself to be overly influenced by the anti-Trump media, but just really watch and keep praying and praying some more and practicing radical acceptance. I also want to thank Dr. Marty Casey. She offered a great perspective. She was like, I don't have time to trip on what he's going to do or not going to do. I got work to do. I love that attitude, Marty. Thank you. Because we do have a lot of work to do. And regardless of what does or doesn't happen with political figures that we really have no influence over, we have tremendous influence over our relationships and our work and our form of world service. And there's a lot of work to do to create a sustainable world, to change the things that we all see that need to be changed. So let's focus on the work that needs to be done. I mentioned this next piece in my show that I did last night on the Awakening World. I had a very significant career for a long time. I made my living producing educational programming for teenagers. We started off doing shows in high schools, became the largest professional touring company in the country. And then we took the best of our shows and adapted them for television. And that's what I won my Emmy Awards for. And I either wrote and or produced over 100 original shows for teenagers over about a 10-year span. This started when I was very young, started when I was 20 years old and lasted for almost a decade. And things kind of came to an end. Funding got cut. Reagan became president. A lot of our monies got cut. And just this big company that I had was really winding down. And I was burned out. I was ready to let it go. And I had one last contract to do. And it was, I knew that this was going to be the last show that I wrote and or produced. And I did both. I wrote and produced it for a long time. And actually it turned out to be the very last one that I did for teenagers. And luckily, the way the contract was an agency that trusted me. They knew me. They loved my work. And they said, Scott, do whatever you want to do. So wow, I had carte blanche to do one last final show. And I thought long and hard about what do I want the theme to be. And the theme that I chose was that 10% of life is what happens to you or what happens around us. 90% of life is how we deal with it. Well, here we are. I think I wrote that show, let's see, 1994, I think. Or 93, something like that. Early 90s. So here we are, 30 years later. And okay, life is happening. And life is not just the election, it's climate change, it's the economy, it's a lot of things. Certainly what's going on in your personal life might be health issues or economic or relationship issues. It's up to us how to manage it, how to work with it. Let's do our work. Let's get to work. And I know many of you who are watching this are very much focused on your work already, and I want to acknowledge that. I think the last two pieces that I want to share is now is a very important time to have a spiritual practice. Many of you do have a spiritual practice, do more. And for some of you, maybe you had a spiritual practice, but you put it aside, pick it back up. And if any of you have never really cultivated a spiritual practice, well, there's a lot of options. It does not have to have any kind of religious overtones to it. I mean, if it's religious, great, but it can be playing a musical instrument. It can be doing yoga. It can be meditation. It can be martial arts. It can be just quality time in nature. There's many forms of spiritual practice, meaning connecting us to life, connecting us to that which is greater than ourselves, and a sense of divine purpose. Now is that time for divine purpose. The last thing I want to share with you is this photograph behind me. Many of you have probably seen it before. And this is the photograph taken of the 8th fire lit by Chief Phil Lane and about 30 Indigenous elders, and also our friends, the Twin Ray, who all gathered for a very powerful gathering in Mexico, where Indigenous elders from the North and the South came together. And it had been prophesied that when the condor and the eagle came together and lit the 8th fire, there would be a big turning point in human history. And when they took this photograph, I love how the smoke behind me, and give you a better view, many people look at that and they see a phoenix rising from the fire. Some people also see an angel coming out of the fire. And that's my final part of my message, if you will. Even when there's fire and destruction, the phoenix rises from it. And I think we all recognize that a lot of old, outdated systems are collapsing. And I trust that perhaps even the new president, President Trump, is going to perhaps play a role in taking apart some of the systems that need to be dismantled. Perhaps that's part of his divine purpose, his divine calling. Whether or not it's Trump, all of us have the opportunity to create a new paradigm. As Reverend Michael has been saying for 20 years, don't worry about the old one crumbling. That's going to naturally happen. Our job is to create the new world, an awakening world. I'm honored to be co-creating an awakening world with each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing your comments.